All right, folks, let's talk about the full moon in Virgo in about 3 days' time. Today is Wednesday, the 21st. And is it Wednesday? It is Wednesday. Am I that crazy? No, it is Wednesday. And on Saturday morning, my time, so really Friday night, the night for me, I'm going to let you determine in your time zone what time it's happening. For me, it's happening at 4:30 a.m. or thereabouts on Saturday morning, the 24th, February the 24th. I'm going to close this because there is ambient noise. Okay. And the full moon is in Virgo. Quite simply, the moon is opposite the sun, of course, which is what makes it full. And the moon is also opposite Mercury and Saturn. The moon will be opposite Mercury a few minutes or sometime before it becomes full, on its way to becoming full, but it's really neither here nor there. And then once it is full, it will then be on its way to oppose Saturn fully. So you've got Mercury, the sun, and Saturn in Pisces, and you've got the full moon in the sign of Virgo. It would not surprise me at all if everyone can already start to feel a certain amount of full moon energy, of full moon intensity, a full moon acceleration of pace, acceleration of intensity, acceleration of anxiety, intensification of anxiety. This is one of the things that makes the days before full moon both hold the potential for productiveness because the moon is becoming full and we are emotionally and intuitively and energetic and capable of getting things done. But because the cup spilleth over or is on its way to spill over, or the cup of milk comes to a boil, or certain things have to be dealt with, and there's a spirit, especially with this particular full moon, of a kind of a reckoning that is brewing, it can be hard to be productive because our emotional body and our intuitive body, and therefore sort of charges up our mental body, and the energy that we can target or harness towards getting things done can become a little bit diffuse. You know, we lean more towards, the more we move towards the full moon, there's the chance and the possibility that we're going to lean more towards emotional excess, and that will pull us away from a certain amount of productivity. As I've mentioned to you numerous times before, it is the week after the full moon that is often the most productive. It's a little unfair that Spirit gives us, the universe gives us, and God gives us 1 week out of 4 in which we can really be balanced. But so it is. Now, that does not mean we should throw the last 3 weeks away. You know, watching my videos, that I am a proponent of, to the best of our ability, aligned action. It would be nice if I myself could be an exemplar of always taking aligned action. But alas, that is not the case. But something to hope for, something to move towards, something to adopt. You know, it is the way. With full moons, there are things that can come to culmination. There are offers that can come through. There are completions. There can be exits from jobs. There can be entrances to jobs. There can be visibility. There can be a moving into the limelight, depending on where the full moon is also occurring. So it's not as if the full moon is without positive possibilities, but more often than not, there's an excess of sort of fluidic activity, whether it is in the realm of things like sensuality, or we're talking about, of course, tears and tantrums. And as I've said to you before, whether it is you feeling like you need to draw the line on something or express something and can't withhold it anymore, or whether it is somebody else who's doing it towards you, it is important to pay attention to what is going on and what is actually being expressed, because what the full moon allows for is something that has been dormant to erupt and become visible. Whether it is right or wrong or fair or unfair, how someone is feeling. It also, with the full moon, there's a sense of an intuitive awareness of something, either, especially it is around things not being completely right, or there being a certain fear about something, or danger about something, or whatever it is. And it may not be factual, it may not be fact-based, but it charges up our sort of mental capacity, and then it kind of, we react. And that is the word for a full moon, is it not? And the disk of the moon is going to be full in Virgo. Now, on the 28th of February, the Sun and Mercury and Saturn will conjunct. So the full moon occurs on its way to these three planets coming together in Pisces: the Sun, Saturn, and Mercury. All within hours of each other. They're going to meet up. In the sign of Pisces, as I've mentioned to you before, there has been some sort of a crisis brewing, of fogginess, a lack of clarity, even perhaps deception, theft, people not being completely transparent, lying, manipulativeness, gaslighting, some sort of a crisis, some sort of a loss, some sort of a needing to release an attachment to certain things, people perhaps, objects to some extent. And it's been brewing since 2014, 15, 16, with 2016 for a lot of people being sort of the peak year of the crisis. With Saturn's entry into Pisces, as I've mentioned numerous times in my videos, in March 2023, there's the opportunity for two things. One, clarity around what is going on, what is real. And that clarity can be expressed as a result, and may feel a little bit like a karmic result. Now, I want to be mindful of the word karmic. Sometimes the word karmic is about the consequences of our own actions and inactions. And because of my own culture and where I grew up and what I believe, sometimes karmic results are about things that we contractually agreed to before we were born, that go to sort of past life things being addressed and worked out as well. That's what I believe. You don't need to take it on. You don't need to take it on. But with Saturn essentially requiring that things be made clear and plain in the Pisces part of the chart where they have not been, the clarity can come from the revelation of something that feels like, okay, this is the consequence of everything that has been going on till now. Now, with Saturn, there's always this aspect of lessons to be learned, getting out of our own way. More importantly, focusing on what we do to self-sabotage. And Saturn either teaches that based on minor lessons or significant culminations that are lessons. And we get to reflect on, we get to get some clarity on what was going on when, and what did we do to lead to or create this result. Now, no result in and of itself, we have to be careful of results, because some people may feel like Saturn's presence in Pisces is creating results that may not be positive for them. I would urge you to release definitions of what are good or bad or positive or negative. The thing to ponder might be what is right for you. And with the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron, unless there's some sort of a karmic result that we have to deal with based on sort of egregious karmic actions on our part, I think it's fair to try and believe that those planets are working in our favor. So when something does not work out, when something does not go the way you want, if you're laid, you don't know what it's difficult to really be clear when something is happening about what is a lucky break and what is not. The second thing with Saturn, the first being this question of karmic consequence and making things clear and real and plain and concrete and where they have not been, is in the sign of Pisces, in the house occupied by the sign of Pisces and related to the subjects and the people and the things that sit in that house. The second thing with Saturn is it requires from us responsible, intentional action that is geared towards us meeting our highest potential in that part of the chart. And Saturn is not done till January 2026. Some part of Saturnian responsible intentional action is the processing of what are karmic results, the learning from them, and the moving forward after processing, the incorporating of the lessons, and the moving forward in ways that reflect that the lessons have been processed, assimilated, and whatever it was that we were doing that has created Saturnian results, which are not always seemingly beneficial, a more efficient way of saying it is processing and learning what you feel you need to learn, where it is you may have been reactive, not something that Saturn appreciates, not something that Saturn wants us to hold on to, something that's, Saturn would prefer that we respond and not react. Saturn, as you know, governs material reality, time-space reality, results, matter, materials. Saturn is not interested in faith and spirituality and just inspiration. Saturn is interested in our ability to take responsible, aligned, conscious, thoughtful, mature, wise action and reap the result of that. And if the actions we take are not any of those things, Saturn, as the strict teacher that he is, makes clear to us what the consequence is when those actions are not aligned, thoughtful, etc. So some part of the second component of Saturn is the processing of lessons and the assimilating of them and the resolving to move forward and resolving to take action that reflects the assimilation of those lessons. And those lessons are going to be around behaviors and patterns that are self-sabotaging, that are not going to create the results that we want. The second part of Saturnian requirements in the part of the chart where Saturn is right now, in the Pisces part of our chart, is the taking of action, consciously building towards our goals in that part of the chart as well. Building a platform. Saturn kind of does this nose to the grindstone thing. Building an edifice, laying a foundation that if it is done in an aligned, conscious, responsible way and takes advantage of the opportunities that Saturn gives us in the Pisces part of our chart, because that's where Saturn is transiting right now, and we put our nose to the proverbial grindstone, or we take on this yoke of the right action, then by the time Saturn gets ready to leave a particular house, it can reward us handsomely and say, for all that work that you did, for all the hoops I made you jump through, for all the lessons I wanted you to assimilate and learn, in every way that I have taught you how to be effective and responsible and conscious and intentional, the right intention, the right intention, the right intention. Not being sly, not being overly competitive, not taking actions that are tainted with negativity. But with Saturn, there's also this question of boundaries. Saturn is not asking us to subjugate ourselves to anybody either, but it's a question of responsible, effective action. As Saturn continues to display to us results of past responsible or irresponsible actions, and as Saturn continues to give us opportunities for us to step into responsible, intentional actions that can build a strong foundation where he is transiting, by the time he is done in the beginning of 2026, as I said, not only can things that have so far been murky in the Pisces part of our charts be made clear, but we may even have the opportunity to build something stable and responsible, and that will yield positive results for us and those we are being asked to care about in the Pisces part of our chart for a long time to come. And if things are moving forward in a kind of disastrous way, because the sign of Pisces and the house occupied by Pisces has been so puzzling, so confusing, so stressful, so for a long time now. And it may feel like things are just it's a little bit like if the car is headed downhill because it has a certain amount of momentum, incorporating the lessons of Saturn and taking responsible action could mean by the beginning of 2026, we're able to mitigate, lessen the negative effects of whatever disaster or confusion has been brewing. Saturn's entry into Pisces is giving us the opportunity to not only incorporate lessons, appreciate clarity where there hasn't been any for a long time, however positive it may seem to us, or however disappointing the actual clarity may seem to us. It is also giving us the opportunity to implement stability in that part of the chart, but even more importantly, build a foundation that is stronger than we may have thought possible, given everything that has been going on in the Pisces part of the chart. I feel compelled to tell you, once again, that by the time we get to the second half of this year, the eclipses move from the Aries Libra axis to the Pisces Virgo axis. And the North Node eclipses, where we need to lean into and put our attention and grow, are in the sign of Pisces. And it's going to be not just one thing related to the Pisces part of the chart, the house occupied by Pisces and who and what sits there. It will likely be multiple things, possibly, related to the house occupied by the sign of Pisces in your chart. But the idea of having Saturn there as an antidote to Neptune's transit there that has been creating this kind of havoc, unless you are actively moving towards, if you've got Pisces in the 12th and Neptune is there and you're actively in renunciatory mode, or you are an artist and Neptune's influence is inspiring you like nothing you could ever have imagined. Those are wonderful, but in Neptune's case, there is this question of understanding that really nothing and nobody is yours. And so things are put in your caretaking for a certain amount of time. And then, I'm so sorry, I have no idea who those children are. Anyway, whatever, if you can hear them. This apartment faces the back of the lot, which has its advantages. It's sort of high and it gives you a nice view, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, because it's the back of the lot, you've got the lots, 2 lots right behind it, where if there's ambient noise, you hear it much more loudly. And as you know, it's when I'm doing a reading and I'm in a particular kind of very concentrated focus that I hear everything that much more loudly. So of course, they're driving me bananas right now. So we're going to have Saturn acting as an antidote to Neptune's chaos and swirliness in the sign of Pisces. And soon, we're going to start to deal with the North Node eclipses in the sign of Pisces, where we actually have to lean into activities and actions related to the Pisces part of our chart, the house occupied by Pisces, and grow as a result of what it is that we need to do there and learn there. Our destiny, our growth, the fulfillment of our potential soon is going to be heavily focused in the Pisces part of our chart. Not only because our fulfillment is dependent on learning the lessons that Saturn teaches us about the way that we sabotage ourselves and get in the way of our best selves, but our fulfillment is also dependent on moving in the direction of the North Node, that while the North Node may promise more than it delivers, and that the carrot might seem juicier than it actually turns out to be, in the pursuing the carrot is where we grow the skills and have the experiences that our soul is here to learn. Now, why am I spending so much time on this? The Sun and Mercury are going to be conjuncting Saturn. When the Sun is in communication with the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron, the conversations are a little bit more even-handed. They're not quite the same as the conjunction of the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and to some extent Mars and the Sun. When it's the personal planets, it's the Sun informing the personal planets about what the agenda needs to be until the next conjunction with the Sun occurs. The Sun burns off a certain amount of karma and patterns related to that personal planet, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, to some extent Mars. And in the conjunction, in the conversation between the Sun and these planets, there is a missive handed from the Sun to the personal planet, to that archetypal side of our personality. In Mercury's case, what we're communicating, how we're transacting, all these mercurial things. And the Sun-Mercury conjunction is, of course, an important step in the Mercury cycle that we're currently in related to the Capricorn part of our chart. So some part of that Sun-Mercury conjunction is about where have we reached in growing and developing the Capricorn part of our chart in a mercurial manner, through communications and technology and transactions and interactions and commuting perhaps. And now that this particular phase is done, as we move towards April and Mercury after this conjunct starts to separate from the Sun, and once it is retrograde on April the 1st, comes back to meet the Sun on April the 11th and completes the Mercury cycle in Capricorn, we are in that phase after the 28th of February, where Mercury will now go into phase 3 of the Capricorn cycle. Phase 4 will begin when it becomes retrograde on April the 1st to wrap up by April the 11th what needs to be wrapped up related to this communication. So we are going to be seeing results of whatever it is that we have been achieving related to the Capricorn part of our chart since when Mercury went direct in the middle of December, if I'm not wrong, December 13th, 14th, or thereabouts. We're going to be seeing results between now and April the 1st, and we're going to continue to take actions that tweak, expand, build on whatever it is that we have done. There's also a certain amount of reaping rewards that will be going on during this time, but we're still executing. It's like there's a first phase of executing, and then something is out there in the world, and now we evaluate and build on that. And naturally, we reap a certain set of rewards, or the rewards start to get underway. The conjunction of the Sun and Saturn, Saturn being an outer planet, is a little bit... It's not the Sun informing Saturn. There's a heavier emphasis on Saturn informing the Sun, and the Sun listening and paying attention. The Sun is our highest self, the part of us that is connected to Source. Some people may say it is our subconscious self. Some people may use the word conscious. Ultimately, when people are using those words, they're really talking about that still part of us that is not affected by our reactive emotional side, the Moon, our mental side, Mercury, and the masculine and feminine ways, Mars and Venus, in which we take action and try to reap results. The Sun on its own is this giant spotlight, this giant source of light. It is our wisdom, our sense of connection to Source. It is that side of us that is always accessible to us, but often gets clouded by however it is that we're interacting with the material world. The Sun and Saturn will hold a conference as we head towards the 28th. And everything I said about Saturn and Pisces, this is why I spent time talking about Saturn and Pisces, all those 3 or 4 different aspects, karmic results, lessons being learned, what is my agenda, what am I trying to intentionally achieve in the Pisces part of the chart? How can I do that? How can I build a strong foundation here? How can I take stock of and understand? And this is an interesting thing related to this full moon. How can I take stock and understand what has actually been going on in this part of the chart? The word reckoning can, of course, imply external conflict. We're going to reckon with each other. So-and-so and so-and-so had a reckoning. But the word reckoning is also has a much more introverted where we have our own quiet reckoning. When you've got the disk of the moon full, our emotional, intuitive side, standing opposite the sun, which is in the middle of a conference with Mercury, the planet of communication and transactions. Mercury being comparatively ineffective because it is combust and not visible. The same is true of Saturn insofar as it is not visible and combust because it is, kind of obscured by the light of the sun. It is not opposite the sun or in any way close to being opposite to the sun, the way the moon is opposite. That's why the moon is visible completely, because it is opposite the sun and is full. But somewhere both these sides of us, the solar side and the lunar side. What is the moon ultimately but a keeper of time? And us, in a lot of astrological systems, particularly ancient astrological systems, Jyotish, for example, the moon, as opposed to the sun, is supposed to stand for us. When we look at the moon going around the chart every 28 days, when we see it having a new moon and a full moon, when we see it go around our lunar return chart, we see us in conversation with, interacting with the world and the different archetypal principles that are reflected in each of the houses that the moon is transiting through, either in our natal chart or in our lunar return chart. When the sun and the moon meet, every new moon, they set the agenda for the next 28 days. The last new moon was in the sign of Aquarius. We're still in the month of Aquarius, where the word month is derived from the word moon, for another 2 weeks till March the 10th, when the new moon in Pisces will occur. But sometime in this month of Aquarius, more specifically on the 24th of February, we have the full moon in Virgo, which is related to, because it is the opposite sign of Pisces, the new moon in Pisces. Some of what occurs as part of this full moon in Virgo is informing us of what it is that we're going to need to tackle as part of the new moon in Pisces month that will begin March the 10th. Within the first 2 weeks of that month, Venus and Mars will enter Pisces as well, leaving only Pluto behind in Aquarius. Certain principles related to the Aquarius transits we've been talking about recently still apply. 2 of the transits that are encoded into the full moon chart are Venus and Mars in Aquarius squaring Jupiter in Taurus. I spent a lot of time in my last 2 videos talking about these transits, particularly the Venus-Mars conjunction video, which is what I did last. Taking action in both a masculine and feminine way in the Aquarius part of our chart is necessary and on the agenda in order for us to move forward towards that carrot at the end of a stick that we outlined for ourselves last July. And taking that action is going to help Jupiter in Taurus create its auspicious new beginning of a 12-13 year cycle and ending a 12-13 year cycle in the Taurus part of our chart. That is all I'm going to say about that, because if you want to know more about what I just said, look at my last video. The third aspect that is encoded into this full moon chart for some people is the North Node conjuncting Chiron. For some people, this conjunction has already happened a couple of days ago. For some people, it's going to happen in the beginning of March, March the 3rd or March the 5th. I think it's March the 5th. It all depends on how people calculate the North Node, whether they consider the true node their North Node or the North Node their North Node. I am not getting into that calculation. It doesn't really matter. The North Node and Chiron are conjunct as far as I'm concerned. Whether it is recently, there's enough happened, God knows, over the last couple of weeks with Mars and Venus conjuncting Pluto. Again, look at my last video for what it is that I'm talking about. And then before that, I did a video that talked about the conjunctions with Pluto and North Node conjunct Chiron. So you can look at those. There's tremendous healing at work with regard to us releasing and healing things that have been standing in our way, with regard to us pursuing what we feel called to pursue. With the North Node, always keep that pursuit grounded and always keep an eye on your material security, because if you don't, you will follow the North Node and you'll follow your calling, but you may experience tremendous material insecurity in the process. So always know that if you're going to follow what you desire and what the North Node is calling you to do, be clear about where you need your finances and material reality to be so you don't compromise on comforts and survival. Because the North Node will give you the magic of the calling, but it could also mean that in the pursuit of the magic, you kind of, the hero's journey in and of itself archetypally is not an easy or comfortable one. So by all means, pursue what you think is yours, but be clear about what you need in order to feel secure and comfortable financially, materially at all times as you pursue that. The other aspect encoded into this full moon, of course, we've talked about, and we are talking about the Sun conjuncting Mercury, inaugurating a new phase of the Capricorn communication cycle and helping us understand the relationship between continuing this communication cycle related to the Capricorn part of the chart and how continuing that into its next phase will contribute to the growth and stability and influence, hopefully positively, the Pisces part of the chart. And as that conjunction happens, both the Sun and Mercury will meet up with Saturn, who will be part of this three-way conference. And the Sun and Saturn will both inform each other, and the Sun will take note of what Saturn is trying to reveal and teach. The Sun will try and convey and communicate and think about what is truest for each of us in the Pisces part of the chart and what we want to build. What has really been going on in the Pisces part of our chart, that has been Mercury due to Neptune's influence and the South Node eclipses that occurred around 2014, 15, 16, and Chiron's presence there at that time in the Pisces part of our chart. We might get some clarity. With Mercury's conjunction, we may either feel compelled to communicate certain things with certain people related to the Pisces part of the chart. More than that, what is happening as a result of this conjunction with Saturn, two things. One, things are going to feel heavier and serious. As I've mentioned to you all along since January, the energies in January until about February the 20th or so, even February the 18th or so, were more expansive. And I warned you that as we headed towards the planets moving into Pisces and getting ready to conjunct Saturn, the Pisces part of our chart would say, you've got to deal with me as well. And you've got to deal with managing the energy leaks and the crisis in this part of the chart. And Saturn is basically saying, it is time to get responsible about this part of the chart. Or it will derail you or create severe or serious problems in all aspects of life, but especially in pursuing the expansive energies in the Aries and Taurus part of our chart. And that means that there's a getting real component and infusing our highest self, the sun, and our mental body, Mercury, with a commitment towards resolving and stabilizing the Pisces part of our chart with the right, responsible, wise, effective set of intentions, and through that, related actions. At the time of this full moon, our emotional body is going to be taking stock of these energies and is going to be having its own moment. Our emotional and intuitive body vis-a-vis this get real, get serious, intend correctly, start to take the right action, stabilize. Just as the conjunctions of the personal planets with Pluto recently, till last week, outlined and gave us a sense of Pluto's agenda for the Pluto transit in Aquarius over the next 19 years. The Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars' conjunctions with Saturn. Remember, we are in what I have called conjunction season. All these planets will soon move to conjunct Neptune. Then when they move into Aries, they'll conjunct the North Node and Chiron, and then in Taurus, Jupiter and Uranus. And in fact, as we look at future lunations, there are fewer aspects because all the planets are just in one. Who are they going to aspect? All the planets are just, they won't be able to make more than a sextile for the most part. And I think tracking sextiles is nuts. It's like, let's just track and act on the trines and squares and oppositions and conjunctions. And if you're on top of those, by all means, have fun with any other piddly aspect that you feel like you actually have the time to attend to. But so the conjunctions are important. The conjunctions are what we have right now. And the conjunctions with Saturn is letting us know his agenda till the beginning of 2026. And the first planets it is informing are the Sun and Mercury. And that informing is going to continue till the 28th, when those aspects become exact. But we're heading in that direction. The Mercury part of it is going to become more pronounced after the full moon. It's really the Mercury Sun. It's a little bit, when it comes to the full moon, the conversation that is really going to be most present is the Sun Saturn conversation. But the conversation that Mercury will be having will be less with Saturn, but more with the Sun. So the Sun, our highest self, is going to be taking stock of what Saturn is communicating to it, and it is going to be communicating what it thinks is relevant to the Mercury side of us, both in the context of what does it mean to the Mercury cycle in Capricorn, but also in the context of what do we need to do from a communication and transaction perspective to help resolve the crises and stabilize and build a strong foundation in the Pisces part of the chart. And the full moon, as we head towards the 24th, is going to be having a moment. somewhere in all this very rational internal awareness, there are two reckonings. One of the reckonings, of course, are Mercury and the Sun having their very rational, very real, very get real conversation with Saturn. The other reckoning is going to be our intuitive emotional side. That is going to be taking stock of the reality of what exists in the Pisces part of the chart and the reality of what it is that we want to build. And as we head towards the 24th, as part of this internal reckoning, both rational and, because we're talking about the full moon, emotional and intuitive, some part of us is going to be flaring up the emotional intuitive side. It's a kind of a red alert full moon. All hands on deck. It's not so much as if the moon is taking direction from Saturn the way the Sun and Mercury are. But it is watching. And with the full moon, always, there's the idea of the opposite principle to where the Sun is. So if you have a new moon in the first house, and Pisces is your rising sign, and the full moon, actually, the new moon is going to happen 2 weeks after, right? And the full moon is in your 7th house. You are going to be asked to take stock of what it is that critical partners, legal adversaries, people with whom you have commitments, where they are at with regard to you, their needs, their demands, their expectations. You may feel stressed, for example, about your partners and partnerships, or they may feel stressed about you. A full moon in the first house is you throwing a tantrum. A full moon in the 7th house is critical partners or legal adversaries throwing a tantrum. But there's a need during this full moon. That's just one example. If you are an Aquarius rising, whatever conversation is happening with regard to what you value in yourself, how you create your sense of abundance in the world, what you earn, what are your obligations to what you share with others. It could be a conversation between independence and codependency for you. Very important with this Virgo full moon especially to understand when it's opposing houses, it's like the yin and yang symbol. Everything is held within a circle on that particular axis. And one house has one half and the second house has the other half. So if the first house is you, the 7th house is your partner. And it's kind of this axis of commitment. Verbal commitment, written commitment. You, the other party. When it comes to the 2nd and the 8th house, it is the consequence of those commitments. We're dealing with independence versus codependency. The 3rd and the 9th house. Local, human communication and interaction and fitting in with others, and independent, divine connection. 4th and the 10th. Home and the world. 5th and the 11th. You as a solo player, you as part of a group or an ensemble. 6th and the 12th, work and rest. Out in the world, engaged, disengaged, listening to spirit, contemplating karmic results. And I'm giving you very, very brief descriptions of the houses, and it's not complete. But on each of these axes comprises a whole. And one house has, and with this particular full moon, very important if you know where Virgo sits in your chart. Whatever is happening in the Pisces part of the chart, get clear on how you feel about it from the perspective of your Virgo side. So it's as if the moon, as I say in my readings, by the way, if anyone is interested in inquiring about readings, my email address is in the description box below, so you can always use that to inquire about rates, etc. The moon ultimately governs our contentment, our emotional life, but ultimately the positive side of that emotional life is our contentment. I'm not going to use the word happiness. Whether we are restful and contented and therefore happy, or whether we are restless and unhappy because we are not content. Somewhere, as the Sun and Mercury and Saturn reckon importantly, necessarily, and the Sun says, this is what I need you to understand, learn, take stock of, deal with while I'm here till the beginning of 2026. The moon, from the opposing principle of where Virgo sits in your chart, says, this is how I feel about it from here. Saturn and the Sun and Mercury. And because I, the moon, am going to drive you towards contentment, the way the full moon will present itself is that it will either make you intuitively aware, anxious, emotional, about issues related to the Virgo part of the chart as they might be impacted by the Pisces part of the chart, or it will help you reckon with whatever it is that Saturn and the Sun and Mercury are discovering or outlining as the agenda in the Pisces part of the chart, and give you a sense of how you feel about it. And from where you feel, how you determine you will drive towards contentment for yourself in alignment with. Remember, when it's oppositions, the faster moving body must serve the slower moving body. Otherwise, it's a tug of war. You don't have to feel like you're giving in. But there is a question of, I'm here, I'm opposite to you, I'm in the opposite house. How do I serve the more powerful entity, the slower moving planet that is creating this long-term transformation wherever it might be? It's a reckoning of what is in the Pisces part of the chart with a kind of clarity that we have not had until now. And the clarity is both the clarity of intention and what we want and how we want to move forward, and the clarity of what it is that we have done, because Saturn is involved, to contribute to this outcome. An understanding that any outcome everything comes at a price. even happy outcomes. A new job can come with responsibility. And you may not realize what seems like an offer letter that makes you so happy right now and feels like is a break towards something. You don't know where that's going to be and where you're going to find it 2 years from now. A layoff could seem terrible at the time, but looking back might feel like a really lucky break. It's more about reflecting on how you got here and what you want to build here. And somewhere with the moon, there is, here it is. It's two things. It's a reckoning of where, in order to contend with whatever's going on in the Pisces part of the chart, you need to put your foot down to protect the Virgo part of your chart. And the second is, based on whatever it is that you know now and what you want to build in the Pisces part of your chart, informing action, especially as you move past the new moon in Pisces on March the 10th, but even now, informing what you do from the perspective of what is going to make you content. Because it is a full moon, you may be coming face to face with threats, those things that make you anxious, discontent, are energized, things you're learning, things you're dealing with. Everyone is going to be stressed and frayed, chances are. Saturn is involved. And so as you reckon about what it is that is driving you or somebody else to an over the emotional cliff because they feel like, hold on a second, this is what I need. Because that's also part of that Saturnian conversation around boundaries. It may be something that is coming at us from someone else. It may be something that we are presenting. But there's also, with the full moon, a component of I see what is going on, and this is what I'm feeling agitated or nervous about, and this is what will help me get to a place of contentment. And the full moon spilling over, taking stock of, in a heightened manner, this conference between Saturn, the Sun, and Mercury, will drive us, very likely, to have the conversations and drive for results that can lead to contentment. Or else we may feel compelled to take action to draw lines and boundaries. The drive towards contentment and the action that is taken may follow the full moon after the 24th. But over the next 3 days, with this kind of energy, we may be really sensitive to threats to our contentment. But it is those threats to our contentment, based on whatever it is that we are learning and whatever it is that we want to achieve in the Pisces part of the chart, the stability we want to create there, recognizing that it's not as simple as a vision board, because we're talking about creating stability in a part of the chart that has been murky and unstable. And we're learning about why, and we're seeing finally past the smoke and mirrors to what is actually there. The next few days may create confusion, a sense of fear, a sense that someone could oppose our contentment. could bring us face to face again with the Neptunian deceptiveness and unreliability of someone associated with the Pisces part of the chart. And the full moon may produce a reaction that allows you to see how, after the 24th and as you head towards the 28th and beyond, you are going to deal with stabilizing the Pisces part of your chart. The anxiety of the full moon is going to be expressed through the lens of the opposite sign of Pisces, which is Virgo. Archetypally, it will look for consistency. Does this person mean what they say? Are they reliable? Do they say something different every time? Are they slippery? Are they trying to be fishy and swim away? Or can I actually hang my hat on what it is that I feel like I've been told numerous times? But it feels like the clarity is there, but the clarity, as I see, is basically letting me know that this is a constantly shifting target for some reason. I need precision, I need structure, and if I can't get precision or structure, I at least need something that I can hold you to, or this person to. And if I cannot, if I can, then I will factor that in and partner appropriately to create stability in the Pisces part of the chart. And if I cannot, then I will take the actions I need to take to protect my stability and create the Pisces part of the chart, either by cutting someone who's unreliable out of your life, or someone who's been deceptive, or tuning them out, or drawing boundaries in whatever way. It could even involve that whatever becomes clear or whatever sort of flares up as a result of this full moon leads you to consult a professional, a lawyer, or someone like to say, this is what I think is fair, and this is what I think is right, and this is what it is that we need, and I keep hearing this, and this is what it needs to be, and we're gonna. All of that from the Virgo part of our chart is serving the Pisces part of the chart. Acknowledging the clarity, acknowledging the reality, understanding and acknowledging how we have gotten there and what we have done and what we could have done differently, and getting clear on what it is that we need to build responsibly to create stability in the Pisces part of the chart. Now, with Saturn, effectiveness can sometimes mean boundaries, and sometimes effectiveness can mean compromise. You have to determine what your situation is in the Pisces part of the chart, and you have to determine what the wise, mature, intentions are going to be. Effective. What is going to lead to stability in that part of the chart as opposed to greater volatility? Sometimes, based on what we're dealing with, it is hardline boundary setting that creates that stability. Sometimes it is the spirit of compromise where we feel like, I can view this as a glass half full, I can view this as a glass half empty, and I can understand that by getting to a place that it feels that way for myself and others, that we minimize or reduce or eliminate the energy leaks that have been in this part of the chart since 2014, 15, 16. It really depends on what it is that you're dealing with. Just know one thing: violent or immature acts, and I don't just mean violent as physically violent or verbally violent. I mean even things like gossip, chatter, talking, running our mouths. I mean anything that is intentionally an attack or sneaky. It's what I say, every victory is a hollow victory. because it keeps the enmity going. And typically the way this works is this way. And there's no end to it. There's no end to it. There's a belief that somehow we're going to affect somebody else's life negatively, powerfully. But I have never known anybody who declares a victory on anybody else to have a peaceful life or a happy life. Never. Never. I mean, you can think of that in terms of the context of countries. You know, you win World War I and it results to, based on how a particular nation feels about what the results of World War I was, I'm being very simplistic here, but leads to World War II. And then however transpires there, we get sort of the Cold War. And then the resolution of the Cold War means that we find ourselves where we are today. This kind of one-upmanship, whatever it is, just keeps it going. And even if someone thinks they're the victor, they're never at peace, they're never at rest. So part of what constitutes mature action and resolution, whether it is needing to set a hardline boundary, or whether it is trying to reach a spirit of compromise, I would suggest needs to be looked at through that lens. Because as the murkiness ends and Saturn makes clear what is real, the overall agenda is how to stabilize the Pisces part of our charts. And the Virgo full moon is reacting to whatever this reality is that is being revealed, and is reacting to whatever it is that needs to be done to stabilize that part of the chart. But what it is really taking stock of, what the reckoning really is about, is who am I dealing with, and are they reliable? If they are, then we can take this route. If they are not, then in order to achieve the stability that we need but the Virgo full moon is also saying, if you don't protect yourself, or if you don't take the right action, it could lead to a loss in the Virgo part of the chart. The Virgo full moon is also trying to protect the Virgo part of the chart from any Piscean deceptiveness that is becoming clear. And as I said, the next 3 or 4 days may lead to this flare-up and anxiety, or this kind of roller coaster. But ultimately, once the full moon is done, and we're still heading to this conjunction on the 28th, we may be able to determine, am I going to stay in the boat with this person? Am I going to let them go? I'm going to find a way that we can maintain a relatively harmonious and productive coexistence. What outcome is going to be infused with the right, mature, wise intention, and is going to create stability and prevent the kind of constant energy leak that has been happening in the Pisces part of the chart. Virgo full moon ruled by Mercury. Mercury conjunct the Sun and Saturn. Not very strong in Pisces, and not very strong while it's close to the Sun. It's receiving, it is in conference, but it's still moving with a certain amount of speed. And the chart, of course, is disposited by, because it's in Pisces, Neptune. All this that is happening is about Neptune and Pisces, and the things that it has been snipping away from you to say, it does the same thing that Pluto does. It's the same thing that Uranus does. What is for you, what is not for you. And to be careful of getting attached to things that you may feel have an attachment to them, but may not be right for you. But at the same time, there's also the question of when it comes to deceit and deceptiveness, appropriate boundary setting. Because Neptune's way of manifesting that loss in the real world is through, sometimes, often, through someone who acts in a deceptive or Neptunian way. Smoke and mirrors, lack of clarity. Well, with Saturn, that's gonna stop. The other ruler of Pisces, of course, is Jupiter, which is in Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus is in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces. And Venus in Aquarius is also ruled by Uranus in Taurus. So all these, ultimately at this point in time, all the planets really are sitting in those 4 or 5 signs, you know. Aquarius, 4 signs. Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. And when we look at the Jupiterian rulership of the chart, it reminds us that at this particular point in time, we are still that Two of Pentacles person juggling the actions that need to be taken in the Aquarius part of the chart to create the auspicious new beginning and ending in the Taurus part of our chart, and allow Uranus to make us more authentic in the Taurus part of the chart. So keep one half of you focused on the expansive energies, what action needs to be taken in the Aquarius part of the chart to create the opportunity and avail of it in the Taurus part of your chart. And the second half of you needs to deal with the crisis in the Pisces part of the chart and reckon with what your understanding is of where things are currently at, and who's who, and who's what, and what's what. And so as a result of all that, what are you going to do to either reach some sort of an understanding that is reliable, or else figure out, if you are clear that you're dealing with someone who is not reliable, what your actions are going to be. To detach and cut loose or set boundaries. How are you going to reach a point where you are feeling safer and more secure and content about the Virgo part of your chart, depending on what you're reckoning with and dealing with in the Pisces part of your chart? And then how are you going to, after the full moon, how are you going to work towards creating effective results in the Pisces part of the chart? Remember one more thing. Everyone is dealing with moving targets right now. Even those people that you might see as unreliable or shifty. They might be shifty because they might be just like you on a day-to-day basis, be dealing with something that feels Neptunian to them and murky to them. They may see you as Neptunian, just as you are seeing them as Neptunian and murky and gaslighty and not clear. So just try and keep your wits about you over the next few days, and try and be in a space of responding and not reacting to the best of your ability while honoring the full moon. And as I said, this full moon is related to the Pisces new moon on March the 10th. And we are still in the Aquarius cycle. If you liked this video, found it useful, share, tell your friends about it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click the bell icon next to subscribe. If you do that, on top there's a wiggly bell. You click that, you'll be notified when I do new videos. My email address is in the subject area. If you're interested in a personal chart reading, you can inquire there and I can send you the relevant information. By all means, like and comment if you feel inclined to do so. It gives the videos greater circulation. And thank you to those of you who do. I mean that sincerely. It really, as I said, even in my last video, it has been an unexpected joy to start to... There was always a sense of community around what I was doing when the subscriber base was lower. And by all means, it's not a huge channel. But as the channel has grown recently, that one of the unexpected joys of doing these videos is discovering a community, an online community around these videos. It's been lovely. So I thank you for that. All right, more to follow.